ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors, episode 286. I said that weird. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, he's your other host, Chris Saturn.
We're totally off to a great start.
This is fantastic. I feel so good about it being
Perfect.
wrong.
This is amazing.
Great start.
Welcome to
the new year,
2021, Justin.
where I don't do anything right. We do have housekeeping.
Housekeeping?
And it is that this is basically effectively a clip show, I guess.
Kinda.
So we're doing a year-end retrospective,
Yeah.
one to give us a break from the holidays, so we're not having to do two full shows in the middle of Christmas, because Christmas was yesterday.
Yes, it was yesterday.
So,
Now, I looked back at it, and last year we did predictions for what we thought was going to happen in the 2020s.
I don't even want to do that.
I don't remember our predictions at all. So maybe
yeah.
they all came true. I don't know.
Maybe. So this is basically us looking back on the year, and so if this episode is a little weirdly paced or timed, that's why.
Yeah.
It really is just kind of 2020's greatest hits.
Yeah.
But first, my week, I've been playing the Hades.
Yes, I've heard
Which
great
is-
things about it.
So when I put Cyberpunk down, I was like, well, I was all excited about Cyberpunk, but I gotta wait for a patch because it's kind of not working great for me. And I had that like new game itch where I was like, I want to have a new game to play, but I don't have a game, and I just spent $50 on that game. So I got Hades on sales, $20, and I had it got like two big outlets, Polygon and some other big outlet, both gave it their game of the year. And in a year
several
that
smaller
Animal-
outlets too.
in a year that Animal Crossing came out. So that immediately got my attention. And then they're like, oh, it's a roguelike. And it's it's good.
Yeah.
It's so good. I'm still shocked. It's Supergiant Games, the guys that did Bastion and Pyre. Oh my gosh, it's great. I've not yet beat it. I've attempted it many times. It is very much a roguelite in that when you die, you go back to the beginning of the game. As far as I've encountered, because I haven't finished it, so I don't know. As far as I've encountered, there is no like checkpoint system or like, oh, you've made it this far, now you can start from this point. It as far as roguelikes go, there's only one currency that you lose whenever you die, and that's actual currency, coinage. But within the levels, you spend your coins at a shop that you encounter infrequently, and all the items you buy, well, not all of them, most of the items you purchase in that shop only exist for the run that you're currently on anyway.
Oh, okay.
So the only currency that you can actually lose by dying in roguelike fashion is the one currency that you kind of spend haphazardly because you only got it for this run anyway.
Right.
And the abilities you buy are only for this run anyway. So it's one of those things where, yes, it is technically a roguelike, but it feels like it has more progression than most other roguelikes, which is further helped by the fact that the story is freaking awesome.
Nice. Now let me ask you this.
Yes.
I am someone who does not normally super get into roguelikes, but I've just been hearing constant praise about it. Is it worth me checking it out?
I would say yes for two reasons. One, because as far as roguelikes, again, you really don't lose much anything when you die.
Okay.
And actually, almost every death I've had, I can think of maybe one or two out of 30-something, I think, 20 or 30-something, that I didn't feel like I made some progress in some other area of the game, some other ability. Because there's, as these roguelikes tend to be, there are a lot of constant upgrade systems. You have your own abilities, you have weapon upgrade systems, you have item upgrade systems, you have story upgrade systems, there are dungeon upgrade systems. So after every run, I'm upgrading other permanent things that I do get to keep. So you never feel like you lose progress. At no point in Hades have I been like, oh man, I lost a little bit of progress, which is, I feel, pretty common in the roguelike genre is losing progress. You never feel like you lost progress. You might feel like, I got so far and I almost got to blank and then I died. But that's no different than an NES game, where it's like, I died to go back to the beginning.
Right. That's fair.
What really is amazing to me is the way they've structured the story in the game, because the way roguelikes traditionally work is, all right, once you make it to level 10, you see another cutscene. And once you find this secret room, you see another cutscene. It's all triggered based on events.
Right.
And in Hades, every run, the story is different. Without spoiling anything, the dungeon does change. It's largely the same. The rooms are kind of randomly assorted, so it's not the exact same dungeon. But the bosses and things go through certain changes. So you'll go through a run, get to a boss you've never been to him, and like, all right, I've got them down. And then you get back to him, and something has happened, and now it is slightly different. And the story, I cannot tell how they are unlocking story progression, but it is in such a subtle way that it feels very natural and engaging and interesting. And anytime I reach a point in the game where I'm like, man, I've really just kind of been hitting the buttons a lot, and there's not been a lot of story stuff happening, something unique or interesting happens. And I also love, at first glance, I dismissed it because it's Greek mythology themed, and it looks very edgelordy. It's all like blood and darkness and thunder and, underworld, pools of blood.
And you get enough of that from your Marilyn Manson fan club.
Right. I've been running the club for years now. I've got my fill. But the game is really great about being completely irreverent to its own setting.
Nice.
And in addition to some fantastic voice acting and very sharp writing, it's honestly, the story has been the biggest joy of the game.
Nice.
It really is top to bottom a top-notch game. I hesitate to even put it in the roguelike genre, because to me a roguelike is a game where every venture you risk losing some progress.
Right.
And I guess that's where it gets the roguelite moniker, but if you're getting rid of that, then what really makes it a roguelite at all? Why not just call it an action-adventure game or something? But now I'm getting into weird genre argument territory where I love to be, but nobody else wants to be with me. They all feel like they've been trapped there. So I would for sure recommend it. It is a difficult game, but it is a game that is constantly giving you unlocks and rewards. And just to spoil a little bit, one of my favorite subsystems within the game, because again there are many, and I'm still discovering them, is one where you are slowly upgrading the dungeon. So you are making the dungeon more traversable and more kind, and and I don't want to say easier, but you're giving it more amenities as you progress through the game. So it kind of has this thing where it's going both ways. Oh, and before I forget, I have to mention this. It has some of the best difficulty settings I've seen in a video game.
Yeah.
You can go to the settings menu and turn on God mode. And God mode gives you a permanent 20% reduction to all damage taken. Which is not an obscenely high damage reduction, and one that you can actually achieve within maybe a certain run of the game if you pick the right power-ups.
Right.
But every time you die, they increase your damage reduction by 2%, all the way up to 80%. So I've been playing with God mode on. Allegedly, and as far as I can tell, you suffer no ill effects. There's nothing denoted. There's no story removed. There's no like, okay, now go do the real ending. It's just like, if you just want to play the game, do this. It's still hard. It's still challenging. It's still fun. But even if you accomplish nothing else and you die in the first room, your damage reduction still goes up too.
Nice.
So even for people that are like, I'm so tremendously bad at this game that I cannot beat one single enemy, when they die, they'll still get something.
That's so refreshing.
That said, I don't know that it's my game of the year. I'm not sure yet. But I absolutely understand why
something could come out in the next 5 days. You don't know.
Yeah, it could. I don't know. Maybe they'll fix Cyberpunk before the end of the month. So yeah, I absolutely wholeheartedly recommend Hades. It's just a blast. And honestly, and I do rarely say this, the story and writing alone, it makes it worth playing. Even if you're like, I don't like action games, I would even recommend, well, maybe wait for a sale before, maybe don't spend the full 20 on it if you're like, no, I hate action games. But still at least try to experience the story. It is just that good. It's very fun, very well done. Yeah,
I'm hoping that it sees ports to PlayStation and Xbox as well, so that it's a little even more accessible.
I've been playing the Switch version, and it runs great. I was a little concerned because the actual gameplay is pretty zoomed out. But even in handheld mode, it it's fine.
Nice.
Just looking at screenshots, I was like, I feel like I'm really far away, but then you adjust. So.
Nice.
But that's it. That's all I've done. It didn't do Christmas or anything. Just played Hades. I was like, shut up, Santa Claus. Get out of my house. I got Hades.
Kids asking where presents are, and you're just like, not now.
Maybe in the underworld. I don't know. If you give me a minute, I'll find out.
Anyway. So I started and finished the Final Fantasy VII remake.
Which you bought when it came out.
I did. I bought it when it came out, but it was finally time. I finally got around to it. I'm very conflicted on it because so first of all, I was really worried going into it because it only covers the Midgar portion of the game, and that is my least favorite part of the original game.
Right. I think I would agree that it's probably the least compelling portion of the game as well.
And so I was really worried that I was just going to I was kind of dreading getting into it out of fear that it was just going to be more of Midgar. But I have to say, from a story perspective, from a characterization perspective, from a storytelling perspective, they really blew it out of the park. It is amazing. I ended up caring about characters that I hated in the original game.
Like Cloud?
Yeah, like that asshole. Now, like a bunch of incidental characters, and also there's new characters, of course, since they focus so much on this area.
Like Chadley?
Like Chadley, there is a character named Chadley, and he's a little bitch. You
were talking with a guy in our Discord, you were like, oh yeah, and then this Chadley guy, I thought you were making fun of him. Like, oh yeah, look at that Chadley guy. His name is actually Chadley.
Yes. Yeah, it's a character named Chadley. It's a little kid who wants you to do like science experiments for him.
That's what normal eco-terrorists do. Science experiments for children named Chadley.
Yeah, pretty much that.
What a normal situation.
But no, as far as the story and the graphics are gorgeous usually. There's a handful of times where you're accepting a side quest from an incidental character that is not like a named character, and their face looks like an early Xbox 360 game. And then it like pans back over to Cloud or Tifa or Aerith, and they all just look
like
perfect.
Photorealistic.
Yeah. It's a ridiculous juxtaposition there. So yeah, as far as all that
those
goes,
faces were from when they started programming the
game. Right, yeah. That's from when they started it on the PS3. But no, as far as presentation and story and music, it's a bunch of excellent remixes of music from the original game. I think I still prefer the original soundtrack generally, but it's still really good remixes. And then you get to the actual gameplay, and that's where my complaints are.
You were, I gather, personally offended.
Yes.
By the shift from traditional turn-based JRPG to action RPG.
Well, it's not exclusively that. It's by not only did they drastically change the gameplay, but they don't even make it very forgiving. It's pretty brutal. And so for people like me who've grown up with the series since the 8-bit and 16-bit era, like one of the big advantages of a JRPG was I don't need any kind of reflexes at all to play this game.
Right.
When something happens, I have minutes to react. There is no time crunch at all. And this game is the opposite of that. Even when something attacks you, you would think, well, just open your menu and heal yourself. You can't until you build up enough ATB gauge, which requires regular action-style combat, which I'm really bad at. Now, it offers an easy mode, but it's not so much an easy mode so much as a you can't possibly lose mode. And
yeah, see, and this is going back to the Hades accessibility discussion. I find it frustrating when games are like, oh, you want easy mode? You must be a tiny child that has wandered into a room and found your parent passed out and are insisting on playing their game while they are unconscious. Like, no, I still want it to be a fun, challenging experience. I just don't want to get kicked in the face every second.
And there are some battles in this that are just really unfair, just really poorly laid out. I will give the game credit. The mini games are mostly fine. I had no problem with most of them. The only one that really bugged me was there's a dancing segment where you're supposed to press the buttons in time, not with the music or anything. That would make sense. No, there's like this little floating star or something on the screen, and when it touches the icon, you press that button. The problem is the icons vanish and then reappear on the other side of the area, and then the camera shifts so you don't see what button it just changed to. And then like the little star is moving over there, but then your dude just like walks in front of it and you can't see what it is until literally the second you're supposed to hit it. And that's really frustrating. But the combat is the most frustrating part for me. It was really unfair at times.
My problem with the demo, and this is my problem with Final Fantasy 15 as well, is that I didn't like not being in control of my other party members.
Right.
Like I could, in the 7 demo, I could switch to them, but I wanted to know that when I wasn't controlling them, they were making smart decisions, and I felt like they weren't. And my concern was that wasn't fixed in the main game.
So going back to Final Fantasy 15, I felt like my other party members were usually pretty useful in that game because, again, I'm not super great at fast-paced action games, so I mostly teleported and hid through most battles in Final Fantasy 15, and my party would kill everything, including the final bosses, except for the very final boss. So I trusted them, and if they started to do dumb shit, I could just use a potion and heal them, and it was fine. In Final Fantasy VII, I feel like the other party members, because you can control them and because you can give them commands even when you're not controlling them, they will only fight if you are not telling them what to do.
Yeah.
They will only fight and block, and that is it. They don't do any special moves unless you explicitly tell them to, which is great. That means they don't waste their ATB gauge on something that you wanted them, or something that you didn't want them to do.
Right.
But it also means that they just stand there like idiots until you switch over to them.
Yeah, and was a person in our Discord was talking about, like, they really want you to be constantly swapping party members. And at that point, I'm like, if you want me to be constantly swapping, why not give me a system where I can just control all of them easily? I don't know, like a menu that controls all the characters that I can select my items from.
And the thing is, whenever you can control all the characters, the game becomes easier. When you're in a battle with 2 or 3 people in your party, it's fine. It's manageable. If you're starting to get hurt, just switch over to somebody else and keep going. Yeah. But there's so many one-on-one encounters in the game. Like it just keeps throwing situations where you can only be Cloud and you have no other party members. So if you start to fail in that battle, you can't do anything because your ATB gauge is drained. You can't even heal yourself. You just have to run and hope that it recharges so that you can heal yourself before they hit you again. And it becomes it just drains all the fun out of it.
Yeah.
And what's really frustrating to me is that a lot of the end game content, like a lot of the like fan favorite enemies and these special encounters and stuff, are all locked behind exclusively hard mode. You cannot play them unless you're on hard mode, which doesn't even unlock until you finish the game. So
that's very frustrating.
And I tried hard mode on some of the early chapters, and it is brutally difficult. Like random encounters were constantly killing me for the first few chapters, and it's just really. Oh, and also you can't use items at all on hard mode. They're all just blocked out. So if you don't have any MP left, you're just kind of fucked.
You see this a lot in a lot of modern AAA game design where they include these modes that are significantly harder, but they haven't built a system that scales difficulty-wise very well to begin with.
Yeah, and now, all that said, I have a hard time recommending it to everyone. To people that really want to know more about FF7's story, absolutely, give it a shot at least.
Yeah.
For people who are good at action games, give it a shot. It's a lot of fun. For people who grew up with old school JRPGs and don't have those reflexes, I have a hard time recommending it. That said, as frustrating as it is, and as much as I nearly broke my controller earlier today, anytime I step away from it for like 6 or 7 hours and have cooled down, I'm like, I kind of want to go back. I want to try it again. I'll try to get past that thing.
Certainly, it seems like there's something compelling there.
Right.
It's just not the gameplay for you.
No, I really fucking hate the battle system. But
maybe
the game,
if it was just a visual novel, you'd enjoy
right?
That'd
be great. That'd be great.
Let's jump into the news.
Yeah.
First up, fans create a C64 port of Puyo Puyo. I guess they must listen to our episode. And they
Right?
programmed it in a week. So good on you guys. That was fast.
That was really fast.
Modders managed to produce ray tracing on an unmodified Super Nintendo. So why the fuck do I need to upgrade my graphics card then? NVIDIA?
Yeah.
Bastards.
They'll just
don't
downgrade to a
understand.
Super Nintendo instead.
I don't even understand how that works.
Did you see the video of it?
No, I did not.
It looks goofy.
Nintendo inexplicably released an update to SwapNote on 3DS, rebranding it SwapNote Remastered.
Sweet.
Despite this, the app is still just as unusable as it's been for 7 years since the Spot Pass functions, which were the main function of SwapNote, were discontinued.
Thanks, Nintendo.
I read this headline and was so excited and then immediately destroyed because I loved SwapNote.
Oh, you're the one.
3D, oh man, I have all the stationaries from all over the world.
Nice.
I was in a big SwapNote group that all we did was trade stationaries when they came out in our regions. I did SwapNote constantly. The 3DS was height of college for me.
Oh, yeah.
So I was carrying it around campus all day long, and I was so devastated when they, for no reason, ended Spot Pass functionality.
Apparently, some people were soliciting minors through it.
I don't.
That was their reasoning.
Fuck you, Nintendo.
Yeah.
They're gonna solicit minors anyway. Give me my SwapNote. So yeah, I was very upset when SwapNote ended. I was very excited at the idea of a SwapNote remastered, and then I was very crushed by the fact that they went, "Oh yeah, we remastered none of it though."
Just the title screen was remastered.
Yeah, SwapNote remastered title screen.
Yeah, some people were saying
I don't ever get to show off my stationaries unless I come to your house and I go, look at all my stationaries.
Somebody was saying that maybe it's laying the groundwork for some new Switch version, and it's going to have some kind of compatibility. And Nintendo is not ready to comment on that at all. So who knows?
An unannounced and unreleased partial Simpsons game was found on the hard drive of a broken Dreamcast dev kit.
I believe it was called Bug Hunt.
Oh, that sounds bad.
The Simpsons
It
Bug
already
Hunt.
sounds bad. Sony confirms that the PS4 Pro will not be restocked in stores following the release of the PlayStation 5. In other words, now it is currently no longer restocked in stores.
Yes, it is no longer in production.
God, what Sony just get fucked.
You know what? Microsoft already discontinued the One X when the Series X came out, so this isn't even new to me anymore. I don't get it.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
Especially for a lot of people. There are a lot of people that I've talked to that are like, oh yeah, the new ones are out. I'm gonna go buy the old ones now that they're cheap. Like that. Yeah. That's a pretty common thing for people that aren't like hardcore gamers. Right. And they wait till it's the last gen, then they go buy it and they stock up on stuff.
Yeah. Instead, it gets discontinued and then goes up in price.
Yeah. Odroid Go Super, announced for late January 2021 release, looks suspiciously like a Switch Lite.
Yeah, it does look kind of cute.
Suspiciously. People seem to love the Odroid Go line, so I'm excited for them to make more of them. I don't have one, but I've heard good things. Yeah. Another major data leak for Nintendo shows that weird patents for the Switch were real.
Yeah, that one weird that fake image somebody showed, that oval-shaped touchscreen with the analog stick sticking out. That was a real patent. That was something Nintendo wanted to do.
So maybe that was a real unit.
No, they never got it as far as prototype.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it just like diffusion of ideas? Like, did someone see that patent and make the mock-up? Or
Probably.
Is it just... Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Yum Brands and Cooler Master confirmed that the KF console, which is the KFC video game console, is real. Not only is it real, it is running an Intel Core i9 9th Gen, a 1 terabyte SSD, and an unspecified Asus GPU, said to be VR ready and supports 4K at 240 hertz and includes a compartment to keep your chicken warm while you play.
Yeah, that's the world we live in now.
You know what?
Uh-huh.
Fuck it. Great. I'm excited for the KFC future where my system keeps my chicken warm and it runs an i9 9th gen processor and a terabyte SSD. If they can make it affordably priced, I'll buy one.
It's going to be
I'll
like
put one of my-
$3,000, you know.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be crazy. They're going to make like a few hundred of them, and it's gonna be crazy expensive. But you know what? Fuck it.
Cooler Masters, apparently the ones putting it out. I could see them just releasing the shell of it and letting people put whatever parts they want in there.
I could see that too. I'm curious how they're going to have a chicken warmer that is going to be inside of a computer, but they're not going to have a computer that overheats.
Yeah, and gets filled with grease.
Yeah, I'm a little curious as to how that's going to work.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's basically just an air fryer underneath a computer, completely separate compartments.
The picture that I saw made it look like the chicken warming compartment was above all the other components, which sounds like the worst idea.
That does seem way worse. How'd you break your computer? Well, I was taking my chicken out of it, and I dropped it on the computer. Stop.
Well, I was putting my chicken in the chicken warmer, and I thought, my green beans need to be warm too, so I just poured them in there.
Combined Xbox One and new Xbox sales in Japan the week before Christmas were so bad that they were outsold by the 3DS family.
Yeah, and I want to say the 3DS family had like 3-digit sales or something like that.
Yeah. So sorry, Microsoft, it's still not going to happen for you in Japan. I don't know what you have to do to turn that ship around, but they ain't biting.
Right.
Ys 6, The Ark of Nepishtim, will be ported to iOS and Android in 2021. Has that not been ported anywhere else?
It is on PC, PS2, and PSP.
Okay, so it's on everything.
No, it's on those 3 things.
Which is basically everything, Saturn. The Linux kernel was ported to the Nintendo 64.
Speaking of on everything.
Unfortunately, with the built-in anti-aliasing, no one can read anything in Linux, so it's just cool. Yeah. I love that people do dumb weird shit like this because it's your first thought is why.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's going to be some weird use case in 6 years that's built on the back of this project that you're going to be like, oh my God, I'm so glad they fixed the N64 with that weird thing. And finally, Artplay and 505 Games finally show off a preview of the classic mode coming to Bloodstained Ritual of the Night in 2021. They're claiming that it is going to be great for classic Castlevania fans.
Have you seen the pictures or anything of it?
I've not. No.
Oh man, they have like 8-bit style Castlevania health bars at the top of the screen.
Oh, that seems cool.
It looks so good.
But let's get into the topic at hand. As we mentioned in the top of the show, we're doing 2020 in review.
Yes.
So we're looking back on 2020.
Fortunately, this has just been the best year and forever for everyone.
A great year to look back on.
Yeah.
We're just going to talk about things that happen, how we feel about them, and kind of maybe what we expect from certain things in the future. We did have a bit of listener feedback. First up is Fun Zesty Close, who says, I finally beat Jaws this year.
Oh, gross.
It was the first non-Mario Duck Hunt game I owned. I actually got to the end fight with Jaws within a few weeks of getting the game in 1988. Yeah. I could just never stab the fucking shark. Now I got him. Jaws is still my favorite movie. I'll always remember 2020 for that. You're probably in the minority in that that's what you'll remember 2020 for, but I'm glad that you found a happy memory in this year of tragedies.
So when did we do our LJN episode? Was that this year or last year?
It could have been 8 years ago, and I would believe it. I don't know.
We weren't doing the show 8 years ago.
Well, whatever. Rhaegar Starkong writes in, was 2020 bad? Yep. Really bad. On the plus side, I did get to play and beat some really great games, including Ghost of Tsushima, Spider-Man, and Jedi Fallen Order on PS4.
Nice.
On the retro side of things, I finally completed the NES version of Rhaegar.
Nice.
Oh, and I discovered my love of board games, particularly solo board gaming, since, COVID. Happy New Year, fellas. Here's to a brighter 2021. And finally, Elk Neodaffs writes in, on the Final Fantasy episode, Rhaegar Starkong and I both lamented at failed attempts of lining up a bunch of Final Fantasy games and playing them all in long-form style. It's always been a pipe dream of mine to finish a Final Fantasy game each month for a year, to commit myself to such a lofty goal and see it through. But this is the time. This is the year. Sakaguchi, give me strength. I'm going to need it to get through Final Fantasy II, a game that can only be described as the 2020 of Final Fantasy.
Yeah, that's an accurate title.
Never has there been a more accurate description of Final Fantasy II.
Seriously.
So we do need to mention COVID.
Is that
which
a Super Nintendo game?
Which we've largely not mentioned on the show because it
not in a while
sucks.
anyway.
Yeah, I mean we've brought it up from time to time, but we don't talk about it much. But it's not gaming related. But
Right.
obviously, COVID warped a lot of what this year was going to be. And there's been lots of game delays and people staying home and playing Animal Crossing mostly. It's just been a weird year.
Yeah.
So for posterity and for future generations, we do want to note that, yes, 2020 was indeed fucking weird.
Yes. There was a pandemic the whole year, and we got to stay indoors. And
not the whole year. It didn't start till the second month of the year.
That's true. So for most of the year, we had to remain indoors all the time, and that's totally not the same thing I would have done anyway.
Yeah, so it's me and my wife were just talking the other day. We were like, when our daughter is an adult, she's gonna be like, my parents always talk about 2020 like it was some weird fucking year. What was the big deal? What happened? And then we're just gonna be like, everything happened.
Yeah, all the things.
So really, we're just gonna kind of fire through stuff that happened and discuss kind of maybe how we felt about it when it happened, how we feel about it now. And first up is the Turbo Mini, which happened in the first part
in March
of 2020.
Right around the same time that COVID hit.
In its current state, there's still a hack forthcoming.
Right.
There was some drama and COVID-related delays over at the Mod My Classic community.
Right.
And
but they are still working on it. They did just make an announcement, I want to say earlier this month or last month.
Yeah. It's oddly enough still in stock. I think we anticipated that it would be critically out of stock and hard to find, and it's kind of not been. It's been
now. Last I checked, it was out of stock as far as new units go, but Amazon was stocking Amazon refurbished units.
Yeah,
and plus there were some used units available at below retail. So it does appear to be available, even if it's not available brand new. It is actually. I just checked on Amazon right now, and they've removed the listing for it. So
no, that's a bummer.
I guess it is not available anymore. But
but it's kind of gone in and out of availability since it released.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't bank on it coming back, but I would say it's a good bet that it will probably.
It looks like they do still have refurbished units for $90, which is a little higher than it was last time I looked, but still below retail.
Yeah, it's still not gone yet, which is good. That's kind of not what we expected from the Turbo Mini.
From Konami.
Yeah, from Konami.
Yeah.
And really, I still enjoy my Turbo Mini. It has become the main way that I play TurboGrafx.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. It had a great lineup on it, and if we can add some more games, it'll be phenomenal.
Oh, yeah. My only problem now is that sometimes I have to play show games on it, and it may not have the game that I'm playing.
That's fair.
It doesn't have World Court Tennis.
Yet.
So how will I ruin my afternoon now, Konami? I guess I could just read anything else about your company in 2020.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's talk about the Polymega. I feel like we've talked about the Polymega a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. For a few years now.
Yeah, it's been quite some time. We saw some early review units in the wild for testing purposes, but the full release of it has been delayed into 2021. So we'll see what actually happens
if it releases at that point. Yeah, we'll see if they actually do a wide release, or if my thought is that maybe they will do a pre-order only for a while, just to see if they keep the positive press that they have kind of gotten in their pre-release area.
What's weird to me is we have been shitting on this project since it came out, and I'll continue to shit on it because they were hateful toward the community that they were trying to gain the respect of, and that's
not a good way to market.
I cannot abide that.
Yeah,
but more so than that is everything's been in their favor. They've had very good press, kind of too good press. the press for the Polymega has been so good that it's shocking.
Yeah,
it's an emulation device.
Right.
It's just emulation, and people have been losing their minds. All the press I've read for it has been very positive, and still they can't seem to get it out the door. They can't seem to finalize things. They just seem to be having problem after problem through only their own fault.
Now, from From what I've heard, their original controllers that they've made are all excellent.
I've also heard that. Yes.
And it almost makes me want to buy one of their 6-button PC Engine controllers, because the official 6-button PC Engine controllers that I have used so far, not as excellent.
Yeah. And our problem from the beginning has never been the conceit, although the conceit has changed. The original conceit that we were talking about in,
Right.
God, was it 2018 maybe?
If not before.
The original conceit was that this would be an all FPGA system with
Right.
swappable FPGA core units.
Right.
And then they said, no, it's all emulation based. And then we said, then why are you swapping units on it? Because all that does is change the controller port. Why not include just
and
a
the
little
cartridge
squid?
port.
Yeah, I guess. It just seems like they could put on 2 or 3 universal
Yes.
cartridge ports and basically cover most everything.
Right. And then it just looked like a Retron 5.
Oh, because that's basically what it is. It's a Retron 5 that plays Saturn and PlayStation games. I think it also does Neo Geo CD. I think it might.
Neo Geo CD, Turbo CD, Sega CD. I think it
and
plays
so-
32X CD.
Our problem was always the price.
Yeah.
And it continues to be the price.
Yeah.
Because since they've announced it, they have continued to remove features,
Right.
add things we don't like, such as digital marketplaces, and the price has never fluctuated.
Right.
And at this point, I'm starting to wonder, like you, if they're even going to be able to handle a widespread release. They
Right.
just seem to be. It smacks of mismanagement behind the scenes. That said, I hope people that pre-ordered it are happy with it.
Right.
I don't believe I don't mean to imply that the press is lying about it.
Right.
Because they do not get paid enough in the gaming press to lie about anything,
That's
really.
fair.
So yeah,
if ever there is misleading information in the gaming press, it's because they're trying not to burn bridges with major publishers. I doubt anybody is worried about burning their bridges with Polymega.
Polymega showed up with the bridge already on fire when they came to the retro gaming community.
Please buy this burning bridge from me.
If you don't believe that, I've got a burning bridge to sell you.
How much?
Let's talk about the equally successful Atari VCS.
Yeah.
In the course of this year,
Uh-huh.
I believe it was 2020, that we have discovered that it's basically just a Linux computer running Ubuntu.
Right.
There is still no hard release date for the Atari VCS. They
Right.
still have not released their hotels or their cryptocurrency either.
That's true.
And at this point, for people that don't follow PC hardware, we've entered a new generation of computer hardware as well.
Right.
So not just consoles, we've moved forward with computer hardware. So by the time this thing comes out with its already mid-range specs when they were announced,
Yeah.
it's going to already be deprecated day one.
Fortunately, it'll still be able to handle Atari games.
For a mere $300.
Yeah.
I honestly, I'm reaching the point that I feel like the VCS, and I may have said it before, I feel like the VCS is vaporware. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah. If it does happen, I see it changing again before release.
Yeah, that's a fair. I don't see the Atari VCS as it stands today on December 26, 2020, ever reaching the market.
Right.
It already didn't make sense when they announced it, and every day that has passed since then, it has made less sense.
I feel like by the time it releases, it will have become basically an Atari flashback with games from multiple Atari consoles on it.
And you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with it for hundreds of dollars.
Right.
Is the problem. Let's talk Analog, because man, they had a year. They had a big year. They announced and subsequently had pre-orders for the Analog Pocket,
Right.
and subsequently sold out of pre-orders.
Oh yeah, real quick.
The Analog Pocket is, of course, their all metal 4K screen FPGA handheld system that plays basically every handheld everything before the DS.
Yeah. All the Game Boy lines, Game Gear, Lynx, Neo Geo, and TurboGrafx.
It is set to ship May 2021 with a $200 price point, like we talked about recently. But
that does not include its dock or any of its other cartridge adapters.
Yeah. You really, with accessories, you're looking at probably around the $300 to $400 range, depending on your loadout, which we talked about in our GBA on a budget episode. Not that that's much of a budget.
GBA on unlimited budget.
I have high hopes for the Analog Pocket. Analog, by all accounts, puts out a good device.
Sure.
I don't ever want it to have been said that I believe Analog is putting out good devices, because by all accounts, they put out great reference quality devices.
Right.
And that is very high praise.
Yeah.
That said, they still seem reluctant to say whether or not it's going to be an item that they're going to restock or make more of. And they do have a history.
Yep.
An ongoing history of very limited product runs that they then say, all right, never again, we're done.
Yeah.
And that history predates even the Analog NT, when they were doing Supergun systems and consoleized MVS systems. So I still want to maintain excitement for it, but it's dwindling.
Yeah.
I've said it before. I'll get one if it's easy. I'm not going to fight for this thing.
Right. And speaking of,
they have also announced the Analog Duo, still set to ship in, quote, limited quantities sometime in 2021, also with a $199.99 price point.
Now, the difference for me between these two is you can get a Game Boy Advance with a backlit screen for less than $200, correct?
Yes. You can get, again, we talked about it on our episode, but in my opinion, the best GBA, which is the GBA SP AGS 101, for about $150, closer to $130 if you don't mind some scratches and you shop around.
Yeah. Whereas the Duo at $200, that is less than a functional, good condition Turbo Duo.
Right, for sure.
So that's the Pocket is kind of a premier priced unit that can handle all your handheld games. Whereas the Duo, conversely, almost comes off as a budget priced for the TurboGrafx intro collector.
The thing about it is that there's the versatility to consider. The Analog Duo plays things an Analog Duo can. It's Turbo and Turbo CD games and PC Engine, PC Engine CD, and SuperGrafx.
Yes. Which SuperGrafx support is pretty impressive, honestly.
Right. But that said,
not everybody has those games.
Yeah, it means that you need those games, and we still have not verified that it will be able to physically fit the current EverDrives for the TurboGrafx.
Yeah.
So it's one of those situations where if you have enough games to play on an Analog Duo that you're thinking $200 sounds like a steal, you probably already have an Analog, or not an Analog Duo, but you probably already have a Duo or a Turbo that
I do already have a Turbo CD.
Presumably functioning, Saturn.
It works fine.
And now I certainly wouldn't mind a Turbo made out of machined aluminum. That sounds awesome.
Right.
I don't know that it's, you know what I mean? I'm not questioning the quality.
Well, that's why this one, it makes more sense to me that it is in limited quantities, because I don't think there's a wide audience for this.
No, I don't think so. If anything, it could be very damaging to the pricing structure of TurboGrafx games, because they're already in short supply.
Yeah.
Especially if it can't work with EverDrives, because the thing about it is the slot on this thing, it's totally enclosed. And the concern is that it will not physically be able to fit EverDrives. And if that's the case, then I want to go on record as saying that is a super shitty thing for them to do.
Now, that said, just about every analog console has been hacked to just run ROMs off of an SD card.
Right.
So that could still happen.
Let's talk about the Sega Satiator. And for people that don't know, the Sega Satiator is a special add-on for the Sega Saturn that is basically a disk drive emulator that goes into the little MPEG card slot in the back of the Sega Saturn.
Right.
In other words, it's a flash cart for your Sega Saturn.
Right.
This is being put out by a guy named Dr. Abrasive on Patreon.
It's a good name.
There was some there was some abrasion.
Yeah.
Because there was a little bit of a fiasco where when he announced pricing, I believe pricing on it is around $300 or $400, which is pretty gosh darn high on a system that you can very easily soft mod to play burned discs. Right. But that said, it is highly specialized and allegedly highly effective hardware. So I don't want it to sound like I'm dissing the quality. There was a fiasco where he came out with the pricing structure and said, all right, and then patrons who have been paying him money every month will get this much percentage off, and people got upset. They thought they were going to get him for like half off or cost. and he tried to explain, rightfully so, that his Patreon clearly states, hey, you're supporting my endeavors to build this thing.
Mm-hmm.
You are supporting me so that I don't have to worry so much about money and working my regular job, so I have time to develop this very sophisticated
Right.
and highly advanced piece of aftermarket fan-made Sega Saturn
Right.
hardware. And you will get a discount, but I cannot afford to just hand you one.
Right.
And while I do believe he was in the right, I do also think maybe there was some misconceptions and miscommunication around his Patreon. And that's probably all I should say about it, since we're also on Patreon. But obviously we have a different structure. But
Right.
I'm excited for the Satiator as a device.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm going to get one because that's awfully expensive.
Ludicrously expensive. I would love to have a flash cart for my Saturn. And there are other optical drive emulators available for the Saturn now at this point.
And they are competitively priced with the Satiator. I think they're like around the $300 range. The Satiator is around the $400 range, and I'm just going off the top of my head. But they're not a lot cheaper. If you're looking at a Fenrir or what is the other one? An Onion? The Mode Onion or whatever
Terra
it is.
Onion Mode.
Terra Onion Mode. What a name.
Well, Terra Onion's the company.
Okay. Is that so? It's the mode put out by Terra Onion.
Yes.
So if you're looking at one of those optical drive emulators, then this is affordably priced comparatively and really kind of better because you don't have to gut your Saturn. It just slides in the back.
The mode sells for $223 after conversion. So it's a little bit cheaper. Now, Terra Onion also is the company that put out the Super SD System 3 for the TurboGrafx, which is also an optical drive emulator. So they do have some history of that too.
Right. Let's get into the category of arcade replica hardware. Yes, it's a category now because there was a lot of it in 2020.
Yeah.
The Sega's Astro City Mini just came out. Reviews on it seem positive. Still no word on a Western release. It seems kind of unlikely at this point. But I've been reading reviews.
Cute though, damn it.
I know. It's $150. It's 50 games.
Yeah.
My problem with it is that I wanted to see more 3D Sega arcade games because those ones are still difficult to emulate.
Right.
They're still difficult to find ports of. All the 2D shit, Sega's 2D arcade lineup is just literally everywhere and has been since the Master System.
You know why it's not on there?
Why is that?
Because it's difficult to emulate.
Yeah. You think they would try though?
No.
They have Virtua Fighter 1 on there.
That's something.
I don't remember Virtual Racing's on there now that I'm thinking about it.
That would be disappointing.
Because
they're using basically the same hardware.
Yeah, everyone's problem with it so far has been, hey, the lineup's not stellar. It's a lot of stuff that's already been in Sega Ages. It's already been collected. It's already been released on Genesis and Master System. It's been in these collections. But man, it's cute.
Yeah, it is pretty fucking adorable.
The Neo Geo MVS-X was announced, I believe, back in August, and that came out $450 for Bar Top Arcade, developed largely by Unico. And it seemed to release to very little fanfare. I can only even find a couple of reviews for it even.
Well, it was a weird announcement too, because
it was.
We weren't even sure if it was legit when it was first announced.
And Unico is still making other Neo Geo hardware. They have this like weird flat arcade stick that they released that's just black and Unico branded that has a bunch of Neo Geo games on it.
Weird.
Unico has some weird deal with SNK that SNK even denied after they announced the Neo Geo MVS-X for people that remember.
Yeah.
But reviews seem positive. The guys over at Retro RGB, who are extremely reputable in my opinion, they said that it was good.
Nice.
Why people don't care, I don't know, but they don't.
It's not difficult to emulate Neo Geo.
This is true, but it's not difficult to emulate a lot of Arcade 1-Ups releases, and they're still going strong and releasing newer, more elaborate cabinets. I saw they have at Walmart a full sit-down Star Wars arcade machine now.
Yep.
And the fan community is huge. If you just go on Amazon and search Arcade 1-Up, the amount of aftermarket hardware for those things is nuts.
Nice.
I mean, full-on custom wiring harnesses and stuff to get in there and customize them. So they're still going strong in 2020. Right. I really thought that the arcade 1-up thing was going to die, especially after I started seeing some of their earlier units on super sale at Walmart.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was going to be a real quick fad. But not only are they surviving with their mostly full-size arcade machines, but they've branched out into other stuff too. I saw that they had some tabletop stuff and some plug-and-play stuff.
Things.
Yeah.
I think the real answer is that these things are just stupid cheap to produce.
Right.
Because it's just your standard flat pack hardware.
Right.
Like physical parts wise, it costs as much as making and packing a coffee table.
Right.
It's just specialty and licensed, you know. So
and with
more power to them. I'm glad that they exist. I wish I could afford one and afford the space for one, but I cannot.
That's the more important part.
My fear is also that if I buy one, I'm going to want to buy a lot. And the idea of being able to affordably build my own arcade in my own house horrifies me and fascinates me.
Yeah.
Also, there's the Capcom Mini arcade system,
which is adorable as well.
I think that thing is butt ugly. It is.
It kind of looks like Mega Man's helmet.
Pug fugly, ugly piece of crap. It is so ugly to me.
It doesn't look like an arcade machine to me. I don't know what they were going for.
It looks like a weird monitor. It's already been pulled from Amazon, so it was apparently super limited.
Yeah.
They also released their big Capcom logo arcade stick
that
this
thing
year.
Was stupid.
Ooh, and I think that's also been discontinued, rightfully so. Hopefully the people that designed it were fired.
Out of a cannon.
But arcade replica hardware seems to be a thing
now. Yeah.
Along with mini consoles, and I love it. I love that this is where retro gaming is now.
And it's weird because I feel like I mean, I get it because a lot of us that still have some memory of the arcade are finally at the age where we have some disposable income. But the future generation coming up are going to have almost no memory at all of an arcade, if any.
Right, but they still have, culturally, arcades are still very much a thing.
Yeah.
And also the generation that grew up with them are... Right. And then the generation that grew up with them are the ones making the media for the generation behind them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of... and I don't know if there's a word for it. I was talking to my wife about it the other day, like nostalgia for something that you never had... You know, that's like baked into a lot of culture now. And that's what I think that's what's giving us these thriving arcade replica and mini console markets is there's the enthusiasts, there's us.
Yeah.
There's people that are like, oh yeah, I remember the Super Nintendo. Oh, I can't get it. Cool. I'll get a Sega Genesis.
Yeah.
And then there's people that are like, oh yeah, I see those things in movies. I hear people talk about those things. There's this podcast with these weird dudes from Texas that talk about these things.
Don't listen to
that. But then like, I just think in my head, I'm like, if you told me 10 years ago that I could walk into Walmart and buy a sit-down Star Wars arcade machine, flat-packed, with my milk and my dog food, I would have told you to get the fuck out of my house. And why are you talking to me about these weird future things that'll never happen?
Yeah, it is. That one is especially weird just because they had to get the rights from a lot of different companies to make that happen.
Oh, yeah.
Including Atari, who totally does not have their head up their asses right now.
They've got it up something. So it's been a good year for mini consoles and arcade replica hardware. The Genesis Mini is still available.
Oh, yeah.
You can still buy it.
Right.
And please buy it. No, really, please go buy one.
It was a good
They're real good.
Right.
And the controller cords are a normal length.
Yes, they're normal human controllers.
Somehow Sega, unlike Nintendo, could afford controller cord.
You know who else had good-sized controller cords? The TurboGrafx Mini.
There you go.
Which is weird because the original TurboGrafx had a 1-foot cord.
So short.
Yeah.
The RetroTink 2X came out, which I don't own one, but I only mention because the RetroTink has kind of become my de facto upscaler recommendation. So I did want to mention there is
nice.
The 2X is out. It's reviewed very well. Retro RGB loved it. Mike Chi does great work. If you're looking for an upscaler for 2020, for my money, that's where I'd go.
Nice.
Is the RetroTink. Unless you're looking for really granular and lots of options, then you might want to go something like the OSSC,
right?
Which has now been fully busted open, and there's multiple sources available to get one from now.
Yeah.
And then before we get into the rest of it, we also have to mention the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and NVIDIA 3000 series have come out, heralding is it 9th generation?
No. Maybe.
What
Let me
what
find
is
out.
it? I don't know. I know some people, every time they talk about games, they talk about it in these generational terms.
Yeah.
I never think about it that way.
I guess it is the ninth
ninth.
generation. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I assume the first generation is Ralph Bayer's Brown Box.
I think
Obviously.
they consider the Atari first generation.
Well, that's not true at all, Saturn.
Right. Well, it was the first generation of consoles,
There you go.
not of video games.
So, I mean, obviously, this is not our wheelhouse, so we'll just quickly mention it happened. Now, PS4 and Xbox One are retro. Scalpers basically boned everyone on every release of all three of these product lines. It is still an ongoing situation. No one can get PlayStation 5s, Xbox Series X's, or NVIDIA 3000s anywhere.
Yeah.
Xbox One X, PS4 Pro were both discontinued in advance, like we talked about previously.
Right.
Sony and Microsoft are slowly trickling new consoles to retailers. I would like to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that it is to combat the ongoing situation with scalpers.
Right.
But there are much more effective ways to combat that. Like, I don't know, limit one per customer?
Well, that's up to the retailers, though. Sony and Microsoft don't have any control
But
over
could they
that.
not request that?
They could
these
request it all
retailers-
they want, but the retailers are the ones who are making the rules as far as that
I mean, at
goes.
some point, Sony and Microsoft can just go, make it limit 1, or hell, make it limit 5.
Right.
But otherwise, we ain't sending you any.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they have the power. They choose not to do it because they get the money either way when
Right.
the retailers buy it from them.
Yeah.
Almost every retailer that's participating in the Xbox All Access program has frozen their participation until consoles are higher in availability. It sucks.
You know what? I am curious when we look back in 5 or 10 years,
Mhm.
what the hell we're going to call this generation of Xboxes. Because
The
I
Xbox Series has been what I've seen thrown around.
that's not what Microsoft is calling it. They are
What are they calling it?
Xbox.
Microsoft, why? You do so much right, and then you turn around and you just Windows it. Why
Yeah.
are you Windowsing it? Stop.
They're trying-
Stop Windows. They
they're
don't
trying
even
s-
Windows anymore.
They're trying so hard to get everybody to just call all of them Xbox and then just differentiate by model. You've got Xbox One, Xbox S, and Xbox X. That's what they want people to think of what is available now. And that's only going to cause so much confusion going forward, especially if what I fear is in 4 or 5 years, we get the Xbox Series X 2024 edition.
Well, first we have Windows 98.
Yeah.
Oh, and then what? 99? No. 2000. Okay, well, you skipped a year, but that's fine. What's after that? XP.
No,
What?
No, it was Windows 98, Windows Me, and Windows XP.
Well, okay. But what's after XP? Windows Vista. Okay, well, what's after Vista? 7. Okay, what's after that? 8. All right, that makes sense. And then you go 9. No, 10. Why? Get out. Stop. Microsoft, stop it.
Yeah, it gets even worse if you look at the actual version numbers of each of those. Because Windows 7 is version 6.1.
The 3DS also officially came to an end.
Yeah, that's so tragic.
Marking the death of one of the greatest consoles that has ever existed. I still maintain that the 3DS is stellar value for the money, amazing lineup of games.
And not only that, but it also marks the end of Nintendo's second handheld era, because you had the Game Boy era and then you had the DS 3DS era. And whereas when the Game Boy era died, we could start to see some of those games move to other consoles, either through emulation or something. But with DS and 3DS games, it's going to be really tough to get any of those off of those systems, because a lot of them are built around having 2 screens, having touch, having a microphone, other stuff like that built in. So a lot of those games are just going to be locked there forever. And that's really tragic.
They're already becoming hard to find, and I already said it, I think, a month or two ago when the news broke. But if you want a 3DS, and you should want one, because, man, what a great system.
Right.
Then buy one now, because they are already going up, and they do not seem to show signs of going down.
And some retailers apparently still have some stock of new 3DS XL and new 2DS systems that are slowly appearing rarely on their shelves. Yeah. So if you are interested in one and you happen to see it in a store, now's the time to get it.
Man, the 3DS for me is the perfect cross-section of new, updated, modern games, but also still so firmly rooted in classic gaming. Just it had one of the best Final Fantasies that we've seen in years.
Which one?
Years and years.
Bravely
with
Default?
Default.
Yeah.
Yep. It had some great Pokemon games. It had still what I maintain are the best Sega ports with the Sega 3D Classics line.
I'll be honest. I was. It took me a while to become a fan of the 3DS when it first came out.
Oh, me too. It took me a couple of years.
On it. Yeah. Because there were so many more 3D games than. Well, I don't just mean like the 3D gimmick, but I mean like polygonal games. There were a lot more polygonal games than what I saw on the DS, and so I was worried that sprite-based gaming was dying. Fortunately, the indie community showed up at around the same time as the 3DS, and they alleviated those concerns.
And then by the end of it, you had tons of Sega games on it, lots of Virtual Console games on it. You had some great Monster Hunter games on it. If you're a Monster Hunter fan, you had some great Resident Evil games on it.
Yeah,
you had
Revelations.
Good ports of Metal Gear Solid 3 on it. Like what?
A couple of Dragon Quest games.
Yeah, some great Dragon Quest games. I would say if for someone that's like, hey, I don't have a lot of money, I need just a great all-around system, I would not hesitate to recommend the 3DS.
Yeah. Also Link Between Worlds.
Some of the best Mario games. Mario 3D Land was fucking stellar.
Yeah.
A stellar game.
Yeah, New Super Mario Bros. 2 was a little weak, but it's still a fine game.
Also, what may still be my favorite Animal Crossing. The jury's still out, but New Leaf was fantastic game. Yeah. Also, you've got Rusty's Real Deal Baseball.
That's true. That is also available.
And you got the little pin shop where you can go buy pins for real money. And I bought a lot of pins.
Also, excellent ports of Ocarina of Time and apparently Majora's Mask as well.
Majora's Mask, yeah.
So,
and man, just I cannot. It makes me sad that the 3DS is dead.
And Kid Icarus,
gosh,
and
Kid
it's
Icarus,
god awful control scheme.
It had a great one of the greatest versions of Star Fox was ported to the 3DS.
Yeah.
Now it's just turning into a 3DS episode. But listen, go buy a 3DS if you don't have one.
Right.
Wonderful system, wonderful lineup.
Absolutely.
And you got to get a lot of those digital games while they're still available because, man, they're good.
Yeah.
Because not just the Sega 3D Classics, there were some Nintendo 3D Classics. They did Kid Icarus 3D Classic.
And
they
Kirby's
did Kirby
Adventure.
3D Classic, Excite Bike.
Yeah.
Man, what a great system.
Oh, yeah.
Mutant Mudds was a big one I played a ton of on that. Shovel Knight 3DS, great. Anyway. Saturn, tell me about retro related games and services and events that happened in the year 2020.
Well, there was the 35th anniversary of Super Mario Brothers.
Oh, right. That thing that pissed me the fuck off. Tell me about all the things they did that pissed me the fuck off.
Well, we covered a lot of this in depth fairly recently, so let's just kind of rush through it. We had the Game & Watch released, which is really good, and we were happy with that.
I don't know that I would say really good.
Okay, it was better than I expected going into it. I will say that.
I was as happy with that as I was with Mario 3D All-Stars, which is to say, it gets the job done.
See,
it gets the job.
I was unhappy with Mario 3D All-Stars.
I don't know that I would say I was unhappy with All-Stars. I think I would say I was disappointed with All-Stars.
Yeah, I was not disappointed with the Game & Watch. I was definitely disappointed with Mario 3D All-Stars. We went into the whole episode on Mario 3D All-Stars.
I know.
Though,
I'm
so
a little disappointed with the Game & Watch. The removal of the alarm function means that it's not something that I play with constantly.
Right. Well, I just use it as a toy, so it's not...
Well, that's ridiculous, Saturn. It's got to have a clock on it like a Digimon so that you know it's a fun toy to play with.
Well, it does have a clock. It just doesn't have the alarm, which is it is
I guess
dumb.
my Digimon doesn't have an alarm either, but I go throw it in the trash. Anyway, I'm sorry.
We also had Super Mario Bros. 35, which was a lot of fun for like a minute.
Yeah.
And
people seem to have dropped off that.
Yeah. I tried to go back to it the other day, and it's just ludicrously difficult now because everybody only picks levels with Lakitus in it. So within minutes, there's 100 of them on your screen.
Right.
So thanks, Internet. Then we had those fucking online challenges with the pins. That was a thing that happened.
That was a shit show.
Yeah, thanks, Nintendo. And then also they released that Lego NES console, which was really neat and also
for $300.
Yeah. It was as much as an NES console. Well, actually more than an NES console used to be.
Yeah.
So thanks, Lego.
Hey, do you want to get a new Xbox or do you want to get a Lego Nintendo? Oh, it doesn't matter anyway because the Lego Nintendo sold out instantly, so
Yeah.
that sucks. Yeah, you
Thanks.
can't get that anymore.
Thanks, Nintendo.
Well, at least we can get these pins. We just have to answer a bunch of questions over the course of 3 weeks. Oh, they're gone too. The website crashed. Well, hey, you know what? At least I can wake up to the sweet, sultry sounds of my Game & Watch. Oh, wait, they removed the alarm function.
But don't worry,
Nintendo,
because
why?
Fire Emblem also had an anniversary.
Don't worry, because next year you won't be able to get fucking any of it anyway.
Yeah. So
It'll be gone.
yeah, it's all time limited. Fire Emblem is time limited, and the physical, fancy, really badass looking edition with the Nintendo Power Poster sold out in seconds.
Yeah, to even say that was limited implies that there's even a possibility of getting it. Only person I know that even got one, and I hang out in a 300 plus person Discord dedicated to retro gaming.
Yeah.
Is my brother. It's the only person.
Oh, he got one?
Hundreds of
Nice.
people that he did get one.
Nice.
Yeah, so
I've heard
Good
they
for
look
him.
really neat.
it's very cool looking. I would
Yeah.
love to have been able to give them money for this
Right?
product.
Yeah, that would have been neat. Also on Nintendo, we have Nintendo Switch Online, which over the course of 2020 got 6 new NES games, 5 in Japan, and it got 14 new Super NES games, 12 in Japan. There were some differences between the regions, but not a ton.
Not a lot for
so
a
that's-
whole year.
For the whole year, between the two consoles, 20, 17 in Japan. So that's some good progress. I'm so glad they stopped releasing new games monthly.
How many NES games are there licensed in North America? 900 and something?
I think it's 12.
So we're so we're done. It's like that scene in The Wizard when Lucas is like, I have all of them. There's like 15 games in his little pouch. I have every Nintendo game ever. You don't, bud. I swear there's more than that. Nope. Milon Secret Castle, Trog, Mario 2. That's it. That's all of them.
All the games. Yeah. So yeah, I wasn't hopeful when they announced Nintendo Switch Online. I haven't been hopeful since Virtual Console got discontinued.
Yeah. I'd say if you somehow were able to get in on all of Super Mario's 35th anniversary stuff, that was a pretty cool celebration. They just made so much of it frustratingly limited.
Yes, and difficult to get to even beyond the limitations.
Yeah.
Also in Nintendo news, Super Nintendo World was delayed until next year.
Yep.
But they did finally show it off at the end of 2020, and it looks neat.
Yeah.
There is a Chunky Toad. I'm a fan of him. He looks hilarious. In not as Nintendo-y news, Namco released those compilations of 2 compilations of NES games, which they've released the arcade versions of these games several times over the years. So getting a chance to get some of the home ports was neat, even if maybe not as technically impressive as the arcade versions.
Not as widely appealing either,
Right.
I imagine.
But there were 2 brand new NES ROMs in there. You got God Plus and Pac-Man Champion Edition, which was neat to get 2 new NES games from Namco. And they're both good NES ports too, so that was nice. And some of the other games on that collection hadn't been re-released in decades, so it was nice to see that. And then we had the Sega 60th anniversary, which was great. The free Steam games. It's still going on, by the way. Sega is still doing weekly emails with special events and special downloads and sales and stuff for a couple of months now. They've been doing that every week, and it's been nice to see Sega treat their anniversary with some respect and not force their fans to jump through hoops to
Now,
celebrate.
to be
with
fair,
them.
they did some of the special games they released were limited time, but I
That's
think
true.
you can still find them if you just go straight to the Steam page.
That's true.
with
But
them.
they also
So-
re-released all of them. They're all available
they?
again. You can just search for them and download them again.
So what you're saying is that a company released a thing and they want me to just go get it whenever is convenient for me?
Yeah, well, they heard that the fans were upset that they were limited, and so they decided to re-release them.
Hold on, I'm sorry, can you backtrack? A company heard that people were upset that they were intentionally and artificially limiting some of their product?
Right. Yeah, it was
How
weird.
how are companies able to hear this? If that's the case, why has Nintendo heard nothing? I don't understand.
I assume that they installed a listening device inside of Persona 4 Golden,
I think
and that's how they heard it.
I think we can continue this skit until the end of the show. Just with the whole time.
Yeah.
As far as just wide general gaming stuff. Stadia entered its second year and still is kind of a shit
still
show.
kind of Stadia-y.
Amazon Luna was announced and subsequently beta tested and subsequently also still kind of, yeah.
Now, as far as Stadia goes, it's been getting a ton of positive press over the last month because it plays Cyberpunk really well. Like, there are no glitches comparatively, and apparently it's just been running great. It doesn't even have the file size issue that the PC version has, so people have been very happy with that one thing.
Yeah. NVIDIA and Microsoft have also formally
released their streaming services. Yeah,
started doing the streaming thing. So cool. Still not going to work on my internet.
What?
But hey, here we are.
Wait, you mean your ISDN modem isn't handling it?
You think I have a modem? That's funny. It's just an antenna hooked up to a little box. As far as personal 2020 stuff, I got big into GBA collecting.
That's true.
And I now consider my GBA collection to be largely complete.
That's good.
I had been out of physical game collecting for several years, and I got the bug with GBA and GameCube this year, and I got the things I want to have in my collection. There are a couple other little holy grail items that are just kind of outside my price range that I wouldn't mind adding at some point. But yeah, so this year was, the first half was me being stuck at home collecting Game Boy Advance and GameCube games, and then the last half was me telling Nintendo to fuck off because I was pissed off and playing lots and lots and lots of Sega games, mostly on my Switch because I'm angry, but I'm still a tool, and that's the important thing.
So you started the year by collecting Nintendo consoles, then you got angry at Nintendo and played games on a Nintendo console. That's what you're telling me.
Yeah. That'll teach them. I'm going to play Sega games on my Nintendo Switch with my Nintendo Joy-Cons TM.
You know, I a couple weeks ago now, I had randomly gotten the bug and wanted to play some Choo Choo Rocket again. And so I dug out my GBA copy of Choo Choo Rocket because it was.
I also have it on GBA.
It was less.
Link up sometime.
Yeah, yes, we should. It was less effort than plugging in my Dreamcast, so I just was like, I'll just grab the GBA version. And when I looked at my GBA cartridge of Choo Choo Rocket, it took me back to 2001 and seeing a Sega logo on a Nintendo game for the first time, and just being like, everything is wrong. Nothing is right about this.
Oh, up is down. And you passed out.
Yeah. No, my 2020 has mostly been the Trail series. I played a lot of that.
You talked about it quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, I played through 9 games, several of them multiple times, and poured hundreds and hundreds of hours of my life into it. And now I'm done with games that I can play in English in that series, and I feel a void in my life. Because I just want more of that story, and it's not here yet.
Now you can just get into the Persona series and waste another 10,000 hours. You'll be ready for Mega 10 3 remake whenever it comes out next year.
Are they a continuous story? I thought they were all anthology style.
No, it's all... Listen, I don't read when they talk. I just...
Well, Falcom just announced the new Trails game for Japan, so
thank goodness.
I get to salivate over that. Plus, there's the one that came out over there this year that hasn't yet been announced for an English release, but somebody released a program for computer that if you remote play the PS4 version to your computer, it'll overlay on the screen with a bunch of little drop boxes that you can use to translate it in real time, because that doesn't sound really obnoxious.
Saturn, please don't do it.
I'm not. I keep thinking about it, but I won't. I'm not going to do it.
I did play a tremendous amount of Animal Crossing, and my wife this year got into gaming more than she has ever in her life with Animal Crossing, and we purchased her a Switch Lite.
Nice.
When they became available. So
now she has also owned a 3DS and a Vita as well.
Yeah, both of which I think she played less than probably a couple hours of each.
Nice.
She bought them because she was swept up in the hype of me being excited about them, and then was like, I don't know what to do with this.
If I remember right, I played a round of Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 against her on the Vita.
Yep, there you go. but she has actually just the other day, she's played way more Animal Crossing than me. I mean, insane amounts. And just the other day, she was like, I think I'm kind of over Animal Crossing, but I don't want to be done with video games. Is there another video game I can play that's not like
one.
Killing dudes? And I was like, well, you might try Stardew Valley.
Right.
it's definitely different, but it's also still pretty chill. You
Yeah.
know? So I think this might be the year that my wife starts playing video games.
Nice.
Because I mean, she did, but may have started a continuing hobby of doing it from time to time.
So feel free to flood our inbox with recommendations for her that is not killing dudes.
I've also discovered that my daughter is enthralled by the Sega Genesis.
As she has been a lifelong Sega fan.
Yeah, all 5 years.
Yeah.
When she was very little, she was enthralled by a broken Dreamcast I had and carted it around like a toy. Mostly she would open the lid and put things in there that were not as small as a disc and then try to slam the lid shut as hard as she could. Thankfully, it was broken.
I'm pretty sure that's how the Dreamcast was designed.
Yeah, it was made for that.
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, this year I've realized that she does not give one flip about my video games.
Yeah.
But when I play anything on my Genesis Mini, she's like, "What's that?" Well, can I do it? Well, how does it? Like, she's just suddenly interested, and I'm like, "Who are you? What do you want with me? What's going?" I play anything else, and it doesn't matter what I play on the Genesis. I'll fire up Decap Attack. She's like, "Well, what is that? Well, can I play?" I'm like, "You don't know how. You've never cared before,
Right?"
So I think it started as the year of Animal Crossing for me, and it really turned into the year of Sega for me.
Nice.
I think is where
That's
I
nice.
landed.
And it's brought your family into gaming together.
There you go. As far as the show, I guess we have to talk about the show.
What's that?
We have gone to completely remote shows in the course of
true.
this year, and I don't know that we're going to go back.
Yeah, it's been 10 months since we've done a show in person.
Yeah. Hopefully you, the listener, have not noticed at all that
Yeah.
we no longer record in person.
Right.
If you have noticed, please be silent, because you telling me that you noticed is going to stress me out. And I'm going to feel like we need to do it in person again. So don't do that. But hopefully you haven't.
Yeah, I just do the entire show while looking at a picture of Justin that I slowly draw dicks on.
There you go. So it's just like in real life when you slowly draw dicks on my face while we're recording. So, it's the end of the year. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of things. Our Patreon continues to grow. Our Discord continues to grow. The show continues to be not just a thing that we do, but also a community that really, especially in this year, has comprised my entire social life.
Right.
I'm in Discord, honest to goodness, 4 to 10 hours per day, every day.
I always have it around when I am awake. If I am not at work, and often when I am at work, I have a Discord connected device around and try to check it pretty regularly. So there's regularly someone in there, at least during daytime Western hours.
Sometimes people join and they're like, "Oh my God, they'll be new to Discord," and they'll be like, "Oh my God, I had to turn the notifications off. It was going crazy." And then I'm like, "Yeah, what kind of crazy person would have all notifications turned on for a Discord server?" As I do.
Yeah, I don't do that.
Literally anything said in any of our like 20 channels, I'm like, I hear it and my phone buzzes. So I guess to end the year, thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of our community. Thank you for buying things on our Redbubble. We have merchandise now.
That's true, yeah.
It's been nuts. It continues to be a thing that I try to disbelieve in my regular day because it's just too good to be true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's pretty nuts how many people have shown up on our Discord and regularly talk with us. And it's nice to just have a place where I can just chat about video games to random people from the other side of the world.
About not politics for once.
Nice. And sometimes we don't talk about video games. Sometimes we talk about serial culture throughout the world or other.
I have a Digimon channel.
That's true. You have your own dedicated Digimon channel. We spent this morning talking about what Boxing Day is and how it should be people boxing.
Right.
Like we should get whatever charities we're going to receive the gifts and make them box each other to determine who has won Boxing Day.
Finally, some sense in this holiday. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so at patreon.com/retrowarriors. And you can find Talking Wizards there and our weird pre-shows and other weird things that we do.
Sometimes we're weird.
If you don't want to support us on Patreon, then fine. You can just leave us a review on iTunes, I guess. We would also like that very much. Please, thank you.
I guess.
And this particular show was brought to you by the following patrons: Mike Rotondo,
Zaven Torian,
STG the Mr. Guy,
Angle Zebra,
Spokes,
Carl,
The Butt Witch,
okay, Blaster Keaton,
Novocaine FS,
and Chris Britt.
Are all the wonderful patrons we would like to thank this episode. And thank you listening. Thank you listening. Thank you listening.
Thank you
for
listening.
The words you hear me say to you and show end now. Good times in year. Thank you muchly. Thank you. I finally did it. I finally just broke down.
Welcome to 2021.
Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week, next year, whatever. It probably already is next year when you're listening to this, because of release schedules, but it's the end of the year for us, and we're going to go enjoy it. And yeah, we'll see you next time. And as always, let us cling together.